for coming for this 45th edition of the Rnblive. We are happy to have you all here. My name is Angom Ruth Julie. I'm the Program Officer for Professional Development at the Uganda Law Society, and I'm very happy to be your moderator for that day. You're almost welcome. Yes, so today we are gathered here for this 45th edition of the Rnblive to commemorate the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Yes, and this day runs from the 25th November, which is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, to the 10th December, which is the Human Rights Day. So there are 16 days in between, and we commemorate it's a day of the 16 days are days of activism against gender-based violence. And this year we are under the hashtag no excuse for online abuse. Yeah, and before we start, I'd like to welcome Irene to give us an opening prayer, and then we'll delve much more into it. Irene, you're most welcome.
Good morning, everyone. You're most welcome. Let's humble ourselves and we pray. Loving Father, we want to thank you for this morning. We want to thank you for yet another day for Rnb, King of Kings. Lord, King of Glory, we want to welcome all our guests tonight, and we want to pray that King of Kings, you use them to give us a message of hope, a message of deliverance, O King of Glory, a message of renewal. Those who have all been affected in this period of commemorating the 16 days of activism, King of Kings, this is a time, O Lord, to listen to King of Glory, and Father, we shall give you glory when they come up and give testimony of your goodness. We thank you, Lord. We pray all this believing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Yes, thank you so much, Irene, for that wonderful prayer. So I'm going to just share with us the program for today, and we've already had an opening prayer, and then we are going to have remarks from the CEO, and then we're going to have our first speaker who will be joining us online, Mr. Mayanja Idi Mubarak. I believe he's online. Kindly confirm. Yes. Then we're also going to have Miss Bruna Patricia Acham, who is going to be our second speaker for the day, and then we'll have a Q&A session. It's going to be interactive. Please let's ask questions. Let's learn more about the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. So briefly, I just wanted to just give us an overview of what is the history of this event. So the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence started in 1991 during the inaugural Center for Women's Global Leadership, which decided to commemorate these 16 days in response to the assassination of the Mirabel sisters. I believe some feminists in the house know about the Mirabel sisters. Yes, so it was a response to the assassination of these sisters who were murdered for their involvement in clandestine activities against an authoritarian regime. So as a result, these activists came together in 1991 and decided to commemorate these 16 days between the International Day of between 25th November, which is the International Day of Elimination of Violence Against Women, and then 10th December, which is the Human Rights Day. So that's how it came about briefly. And as I already mentioned, this year, it's basically, the theme is is unite to end digital violence against all women and girls. I believe everyone here, almost everyone or everyone has a smartphone. We've interacted with gadgets, we've interacted with laptops, with smartphones and all these. We are always online. And online abuse is not something that's new to us. There are different forms of online abuse, harassment, cyber stalking, cyber bullying, and all those different things. So today we are going to just commemorate and see how we can end and stop online abuse, especially for women and girls, because statistics show that actually women and girls, 1 in 3 women experience gender-based violence in their lifetime, meaning that for every 3 women that you see, at least 1 has ever experienced gender-based violence in their lifetime. And not only that, statistics also show that 16 to 58% of women and girls face digital violence. Yeah? So that's quite a big margin, 16 to 58%. That means quite a number, more than half of women and girls in their lifetime have ever experienced digital violence. It could be in form of cyber harassment, bullying. Now in the era of AI, there is also deep fake videos. Have you seen those videos where, someone has an AI generated video or photo and it's mimicking another person, but then it's not really true, So some people even use those AI videos and for pornography, it's really unfortunate. And then statistics also show that 90 to 95% of deep fake videos are sexual images of women. As I was saying, those AI generated videos, they are usually fake videos, but then you'll find that 90% of them are sexual images, or sexual images of women. So it's really unfortunate, and that's why these 16 days of activism against gender-based violence is here to commemorate and see how we can join together to stop online abuse. And we know that technology is here to stay. So we have to learn how to adjust and use and take advantage of the proper use of technology. So without further ado, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Ms. Sheila, who is going to give remarks on behalf of the CEO. Sheila, you're most welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I bring you warm greetings from the CEO, Ms. Christina Wari, who is not able to join us this morning because she is away representing ULS at the East Africa Law Society, at the East Africa Law Society annual general meeting and conference that's happening in Addis Ababa. Our speakers of the day, Mr. Idi Mayanja, who's joining us online, and Ms. Patricia Bruna Acham, who's here with us physically, the ULS Governing Council that's joining us online, members of the society who are with us here physically and those joining us online, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, you are all most welcome to today's 45th Rnblive weekly press and public engagement. And as the moderator has mentioned, today we are joining the world in commemorating the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And this, like you have heard, is a global campaign that's very pivotal for advancing the protection of women and girls in all spheres of life, including the digital environment. In Uganda, we see remarkable strides in gender equality, yet challenges still persist. A 2021 UBOS report found that 95% of women and girls have experienced some form of violence, whether physical, sexual, emotional, or economic. And in 2022, reports showed that an increase in domestic violence amongst women and girls from 39%, which had been reported in 2016, to 43% in 2022. So this year's global focus is on digital violence, as you have heard from the moderator, and the theme is to unite to end digital violence against women and girls. The digital era, as we know, presents opportunities for empowerment, but also it introduces unique risks, especially to the women and the girls. As the moderator earlier was mentioning, how you find all sorts of images and photos online that reflect negatively on the women and the girls. So these threats, as you've heard, include the cyberbullying, the online harassment, exploitation, and misinformation that disproportionately affects women and girls. So we must act decisively to make digital platforms safer and more inclusive, ensuring that they become safe spaces for opportunity rather than harm. As the Uganda Law Society, through our legal aid project, we support enhancing access to justice for women and girls, and this we do with support from the UN Women, where we have a project that we are implementing in Karamoja and northern Uganda that focuses really on supporting the women and girls, especially those that have experienced or are at risk of experiencing violence. And some of the things that we do include actually supporting them against issues around digital violence. And we support them in so many ways. We offer advice, we offer representation, we do mediation, we do sensitization so that they are aware of their rights and how to seek redress when these rights have been violated. And so we call upon each and every one of us to join this cause to fight against the violence against women and girls. On another note, the Uganda Law Society would like to extend its sincere appreciation to the pro bono advocates, and these we are appreciating the ones that have joined us this week in supporting people that were arrested during the campaign rally that was in Kawempe for the opposition party NUP, where we had quite a number of people arrested and taken to different places of detention. And these advocates joined the Uganda Law Society to represent these people and get bail for some of them. So far, they've been able to get bail for 15 people. And so we'd like to sincerely appreciate those advocates that came in to offer this support. I will mention just a few. We have Mr. Tumusime Kato, Mr. Tumusime Kakuru, Elotu Jonathan, Nuwamanya Brian, Haruna Freedom, Kafukolwanga, Kamukama Obadiah, and Robert Jurua. We are grateful to each one of them, and we call upon all our members to reach out to the ULS Secretariat. Particularly, you can reach out to either Robert Jurua or Obadiah Kamukama and join this effort to provide the pro bono support to persons who have been unlawfully arrested, because we see that this is happening a lot during this campaign time, and so we call upon you to join hands with the ULS team to offer support to those that will need it. Once again, you are all welcome to this week's edition of the Rnblive, and special thanks again to our speakers for accepting our invitation, and thanks to all the members and the public for joining the conversation. Your voices are essential, and it is through dialogues like this that we move closer to a world free of gender-based violence. Thank you, and I wish you fruitful discussions.
Thank you so much, Sheila, for those warm remarks from the CEO. Yes, and in addition to that, we'd also like to bring warm greetings from the Radical Nuba Executive Council, who are currently in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, for the East Africa Law Society Annual Conference. They send their regards. I know they are following us online, and they would like to also appreciate you all for being here, our advocates that helped to bail out some of the members who are arrested during the rally in Kawempe. We really appreciate your efforts. Thank you so much. So without further ado, we'd like to dive right into today's session, and we are going to have our first speaker, Mr. Mayanja Idi Mubarak. I believe he's online. Kindly confirm if you can hear us, Mr. Mubarak.
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay.
I don't know whether I'm audible.
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Before you come on, allow me to just introduce you briefly. Yes, we are so happy to have you, Mr. Mayanja, here at the ULS house. Yes, Mr. Mayanja has 15 years of work expertise in social development, social protection, advancing gender equality, and women empowerment in Uganda and the East African region at large. He currently serves as the Principal Women in Development Officer at the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. Under the ministry, he has held several responsibilities, including Ministry of Gender Focal Person in IGAD on Gender and Economic Cooperation and Community Development, Ministry of Gender Focal Person in UBOS on Gender Statistics, Ministry of Gender National Coordinator for GBV Shelters, Ministry of Gender Focal Person on Support to Uganda Response to GBV Prevention and Response, among others. He holds a Master's of Science in Organization, Public Policy and Management, a postgraduate diploma in Gender and Local Economic Development, a postgraduate diploma in Project Planning and Management, a Bachelor's of Honors in Adult and Community Education. You're most welcome, Mr. Mubarak. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator, for that kind introduction. And I want to say, I don't know whether you're getting me. Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, but your video is not on.
I don't know, but I've switched it on.
Just a second. Our technical team is trying to. Oh, okay. I've been informed. I think your camera has a small issue, but nevertheless, you can go right ahead. We can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Moderator. Thank you for the kind introduction. And I want to most sincerely thank the Uganda Law Society, and in particular, the Radical New Bar, for inviting me to speak to the theme that is marking the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, but more specific, violence against the women and girls at the global level, but specifically our intervention as Uganda that are geared towards fighting GBV against women and girls in this country. And I wish to register my appreciation to my colleague who is a panelist for today, but also the conveners and all the partners that have made it possible for us to speak to each other this morning. You may be aware that On 25th, that was a Tuesday, the government of Uganda, in partnership with different partners, especially the UN system, we launched the 16 days of activism campaign against gender-based violence and violence against women and girls. And the national launch, we held it in Kasese district under the same global theme that we adopted, Unite to End Digital Violence Against All Women and Girls. And I want to thank everyone that graced this ceremony in Kasese and joined the rest of the country when we're flagging off all the allies, advocates that speak vehemently about ending violence in Uganda against women, men, boys, and girls. And we had a very colorful ceremony which actually marked as a launch pad for the rest of the patriots who are in line of speaking, creating awareness, sensitizing communities, building allies to ensure that there are innovative ways on how we can together as a country to end violence in Uganda. In terms of the magnitude of GBV, of course, the representative of the CEO, but also the moderator, slightly have spoken to these statistics, which I didn't want maybe to dive into so much because there has been a general figure. But what I want to remind you is that as we are launching and starting the 16 days of activism campaign against GBV, we must also celebrate. I know there is a lot of lamentations in the country in terms of what has not been done. But what is also very key in terms of defining the way forward is celebrating where we have come from. Because if you look at the current statistics of WUPBOS of 2024, that is the census, which was recently carried, you see that there has been a significant drop in terms of violence against women and girls, but also generally violence against women and men and boys. And therefore, I wish to thank everyone who has contributed these efforts of ensuring that the GBV has reduced. In terms of what we are celebrating as milestones, if we can pick from 2016, according to the Uganda Demographic Household Survey conducted at that level, GBV in general, but specifically the physical violence, was about 56% amongst women, and it dropped tremendously to almost 44%. And as I talk now, GBV as our baseline for NDP4, the prevalence of physical violence amongst women is at 43.5%, which gives us the impetus for us to celebrate because we have come from far. Actually, from the time before we formulated the GBV national policy to eliminate GBV in Uganda, years back, let us give ourselves a baseline of 2007. Physical violence against women was measured at almost 76%. But today we are celebrating that actually, as we talk now, after a very rigorous and vigorous implementation that has been put forward by government, but also by the partners, you see a slight reduction of GBV prevalence in terms of physical. And I want to make this clear, when we are measuring GBV, we measure it in different categories: physical violence, sexual violence, economic violence, and other categories as how GBV manifests. So you would really see sexual violence from the time when we formulated the policy in 2016, sexual violence was at a rate of 26%. And today we are celebrating there's been a slight reduction, though that is not something that we would really be proud of, but there has been a reduction from 26% to almost 16% as we talk now. And this really gives us a better roadmap in terms of saying how do we now take away the 16% in terms of sexual violence. And sexual violence is measured in different thematic areas like teenage pregnancies, child marriages, and other categories of sexual violence like harassment in offices, harassment in business posts, and so on. And there has also been a slight reduction in domestic violence to almost from 44% in 2016 to 34%. And therefore it means the non-state actors and the state, I think we are doing a very great job in terms of ensuring that indeed these figures are reducing. But also, if this is still corroborated with the annual crime report run by Uganda Police Force, you'd really see a slight decrease in the cases now that are being reported for both physical violence, sexual violence. There has been, and I invite you that interest yourselves to read the recent report, which was published in 2024, and has all these details, and you will see the trend analysis in terms of reduction. However, government is not proud of the status quo as how violence is as of today. That is why we have now aggressively put our feet down to ensure that we revise the National Action Plan on Elimination of Gender-Based Violence in Uganda. And specifically now, this National Action Plan Phase 2 speaks of innovative ways on how we are going to prevent GBV as one thematic area. 2, on how we are going to respond to GBV, because as we are talking about prevention, there are colleagues and friends that are being trapped in GBV. You are here in cases of defilement, you are here in cases of teenage mothers, you are here in cases of child marriages, you are here in cases of continuous domestic violence. And therefore, these Ugandans require a response mechanism where they can access services that include, but not limited to, psychosocial support, legal aid that the executive director has spoken about, and the moderator. And we want to thank colleagues that have really come out there to provide the pro bono services where most survivors of GBV have always failed to get resources to ensure funding their legal process to access justice. So back to the theme, days of activism. Of course, we want to ensure that we are amplifying the voices, but making every Ugandan to understand the new emerging issues on how now violence is actually manifesting. And one of the emerging issues in gender-based violence is now the digital violence. And if I may not really repeat what the moderator said, we have defined this clearly in the National Action Plan that we are going to start implementing next year to define, demystify, but also make every Ugandan now understand the different the different forms of digital violence that actually the moderator ably spoke about. But if I would really run in 1 minute, these have been clearly defined as one of the leading forms of digital violence. One of them is the non-consensual sharing of intimate images. And it is by girls, young women, students. People share intimate images as they wish, without the consent of the owner of the images. Then the cyber harassment and cyber bullying, I think this has been ably explained. The cyber stalking, often linked to intimate partner violence or coercive control. And it is very, very common. The sextortion, especially targeting schoolgirls, university students, and women seeking employment or financial support. You have heard actually about what we call the sex clubs, the rich men who are saying, bring me this number of girls, and you know they're there, and they are abusing these young lads. Then the impersonation and fake accounts, of course, to defraud, humiliate, politically target women, including, and this actually, it is pulling down most of the young women who are aspiring to be leaders and are using the digital space. Doxing, this the malicious publication of private information such as the phone numbers, home addresses. Then the deep fakes, the moderator has really explained this very, 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 and we are saying manipulating sexual images of women without consent. I think this is not okay. And our national action plan is defining actions, including penalties, actually, to ensure how do we leverage on the legal regime that is available to ensure that the perpetrators are brought to book. So, in a nutshell, we want to appreciate that as we commemorate and mark the 16 days of activism, I want to implore all Ugandans, because Uganda, we are proud that the legal and policy framework is very pregnant in terms of the laws that we have. When you look at the Domestic Violence Act, I think it has done a lot in terms of supporting the penal code, in terms of giving quick implementation of the penal code. And there's been a lot of arguments. For instance, the Violence Act has remedies for addressing issues of marital rape. Though in the penal code there will be challenges of saying, but how do you define it? Who is the witness? And all this. The Domestic Violence Act says, under certain circumstances that are very clear. For instance, if your spouse reported you and said, my husband forced me into sex, and is actually, it is proved beyond reasonable doubt that that woman, one, she was ill, sick, and there is evidence by medical expert, and has given an opinion that true, this woman in the situation that she was in, she would not have been really forced into sexual action. Issues of women being in the cycles, and it's proved that you forced your spouse when she's in her cycles. Then I think the Domestic Violence Act has remedies of all. There are men who have been actually very stubborn, who are even forcing their spouses to sleep with them when she delivered 3 days ago. And if this is actually proved beyond reasonable doubt, then that is evidence enough to bring this perpetrator into book. So we want to appreciate that there are different legal frameworks, the Domestic Violence Act, and you know, I'm talking the legal minds. I'm sure they have advised us that now we are not, when you are citing a legal instrument, you don't now mention there, but you mention the cap. But for today, allow me mention theirs, the Domestic Violence Act of 2010, We have the Anti-Trafficking in Person Act of 2009. And we have the FGM is a political season. I think people are moving with, I don't know whether you are getting that sound. But these legal frameworks have been really so handy, including even the Computer Misuse Act. These ones, we want to ensure that we mobilize the country, that we take advantage of the laws. Then, of course, the policies, the national policy that was formulated in 2016 to eliminate GBV has very pragmatic and robust thematic areas, and one key of them is the prevention part. That has a number of actions and interventions that have been defined, that every Ugandan, whether you are government, a non-state actor, you must really ensure that it is a crusade, and we implement those actions. But what is very key in the prevention, which came out of the study that Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development conducted in 2017, after the President had directed that we understand the underlying causes of GBV and violence against women so that we get comprehensive actions. It was found out that the major underlying causes, the underlying roots that cause GBV in the country, one major one was the negative social norms or the social norms. Then number two was the poverty. So in this National Action Plan, we are saying we must work aggressively to ensure that we are shifting and transforming the social norms. Let us document those positive social norms that can take us forward, then denounce those ones that are negative, that are taking us behind. So that is very key. And on poverty, of course, is the innovative intervention that the ministry is taking lead of ensuring that we are addressing poverty through different initiatives of women economic empowerment. You've seen PDM, you've seen Emyoga, and PDM, we have ensured there is a reservation for women. 30% is a ring fence, no one should go there. But there are special programs now, specifically for women. The Uganda Women Entrepreneurship Program, we have Grow Now. Grow is targeting now women. It's not for poor women. It's targeting now women who are staggering. They have started business. They are staggering. So this money, we have put this money in the commercial banks at a very low interest rate for you to access the spread, which is below 10%. And this is all done to ensure that we are mobilizing, or we are building a critical mass of women who have money, because much of the causes, the underlying causes that either women and young women or young girls are staying in abusive homes because of the inabilities for them to fend for themselves. So for me, in terms of what we have, in terms of progress, I'm proud that together as a nation, we have done a number of things. As I end, let me remind you of some of the initiatives in terms of response. You're aware that today we are running registered GBV shelters, about 23 in the country, in different regions of Uganda, and this is to ensure that there are safe spaces where women and young women or young girls can run, for them to get respite, to ensure that they're accessing services, including one that the moderator and CEO mentioned about, the pro bono services, to ensure they get to legal aid and access justice. So this has actually worked very well, and so far about 46 in the last 3 years about 46,000 survivors who have been actually women have accessed services in these GBV shelters. But also, we have innovatively provided a toll-free line for Sauti, the Sauti Kiswahili word, the 116, and the SafePal app, where cases of violence against children, but also gender-based violence, because we have merged it to ensure that Ugandans are reporting cases of GBV, and you would actually see that there has been a tremendous increase of cases of GBV being reported. Either they are reporting them to police, either they are reporting them to any GBV referral pathway. So we want to thank everybody who has done this to ensure that this information is reaching every Ugandan in the darkest spot, part of this country, to ensure that they are getting. So what we are calling upon colleagues and people who are listening to me is to ensure that let us take advantage of this theme of end digital violence against women and girls, provide information, because what is actually bringing all some of the challenges, even the perpetrators, they may be doing this without knowing the implications of the law. I think we need to do much in terms of disseminating the information on how the law works, what are the penalties, but also provide information to those ones, the potential victims that they would do, those ones that they would take advantage of. So the moment somebody is empowered, we rebuild and build the agency of the victim. Then I'm very sure people may report this case, people may seek for justice, and therefore let us ensure that this information in these 16 days, we are out there providing the patient with the information for them to know the different categories on how digital violence is actually happening. Then if we do that, I'm very sure that everybody now will be empowered, everybody will become an ambassador, and everybody will talk about it. Lastly, allow me speak in 1 minute about the challenges, the emerging challenges. Though we celebrate some of the milestones, but there has been challenges that are still on our way. That's why we are not combating, but also eliminating GBV in Uganda because of some 2 or 3 key reasons. And one key is the slow mindset change and translation of information in tangible behavioral actions. I think this has remained a critical hurdle to social transformation and ending GBV, which is attributed to civic irresponsibility, limited civic engagement, poor information seeking behavior, uncoordinated information, and weak community mobilization. Uncoordinated information and weak community mobilization is how does one package the information on use of digital device. We know, the era is digital, but people should understand how this space should be used. Digital should be for ensuring that we are increasing the chances of the people to get opportunities, but not being a place where we are violating other people. Then, of course, there has been resistance from some communities. The negative social norms are still continuing. You can see now FGM, yes, we are proud that out of in the 10 years ago, the prevalence of FGM was almost
Mr. Mubarak, your
2
network
point
is
something
breaking.
percent. So it means still those cases where we are having, yes, those areas that we still have Then that's lastly, the issue of the looming backlash of women's economic empowerment. Of course, men are giving all the reasons to say, an empowered woman economically becomes very stubborn, is unmanageable. So this is reinforcing violence with those simple excuses that men are giving. But also, I think going forward, we want to hear the men whether what they are talking about is right, especially now in the elite. That's where we are finding these backlashes. Because men are saying, you are having a home, you are all getting out of the home, but it's only your money which is being put on the table, and the woman's money is not being put on the table. And the feminists are saying, yes, our money should not be in the table because it is his responsibility. So how do we now reach concurrence on this one that gender equality outcomes must be visible and seen at household level, that the growth, the level at which this family, this household will grow because everybody is contributing will be high. So these backlashes, we need to really speak to men strategy to ensure that women are not competing with us. Women are partners in development, and they are working towards developing their homes. So those are some of the key backlashes, but of course not forgetting the shrinking fiscal space for GBV intervention. Now the branch, how there are people redefining social development. So these are all the challenges that we are meeting, but I know the future is very, very bright. So I wish to really, as I end my event, I want to call upon you that let us make the internet to expand, and we make it must be expanded opportunity, should not be fear. And ending the digital violence against women and girls is not only more imperative, it is essential for education, because if digital violence continues, then very many girls are going to be stopped from schools, but also the boys who are being stalked with the sexual abuse. If you saw the statistics of sexual violence against men, people were asking, how does sexual violence happen to men? But we have seen those cases where young boys are sodomized and they are using actually the digital space. So it will be essential for education innovation. It will be good for national security, democratic participation. And so I want to urge you and call upon you in your different capacities to take advantage of the 16 days for us to disseminate, create awareness for the population to understand how violence in general is happening. But for this year in 2025, we are putting efforts on how we are amplifying the voices to end violence, digital violence against women and girls. I wish once again thank you, the conveners, Uganda Law Society, for inviting us, Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, to speak to you, sharing our experiences and insights, but also to convey our most sincere appreciation to all others that have been up to the game of ending violence against women and girls in this country. I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mubarak, for those wonderful insights. We've really learned so much. And as members who are here and online, we are commemorating the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Mr. Mubarak, before you leave, we have just a couple of questions for you.
Yes, please.
Okay, yes, thank you so much. So, we have just a couple of questions from the audience. Okay, Mr. Joel says, men also face domestic violence but rarely report it. I hope I can be heard. Mr. Mubarak, can you hear me?
You are broke, but I hear you now.
Okay, yes. We have a question here from Joe who says that men also face domestic violence but rarely report it. What steps is the ministry taking to design survivor-centered services that are accessible and safe for male victims? I know we are celebrating the 16 days of activism against women and girls, but there's always this argument that girls have always been the center of focus when it comes to, you know, activism, when it comes to all sorts of things, and the boy child tends to be forgotten. So someone is asking here that what steps is the ministry taking to design survivor-centered services that are accessible and safe for male victims? Because as you've just mentioned, men also go through sexual violence. There is actually a key case, the case of Akayesu, Jean-Claude Akayesu, which happened after the Rwanda genocide, where the ICC held that men can be subject to sexual violence. In that case, some of the should I say the victims of the genocide were being assaulted, they were being sodomized, they were, you know, fixing foreign objects into their private places, and the court found that this amounted to sexual violence against men. So, back to our question, what are the steps that the ministry is taking to also protect the boy child and male victims of gender-based violence? Thank you.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you, Joel, for the wonderful question. And one key thing, I think, in my presentation, alluded to the innovative ways, and one key is the male engagement strategy, male involvement strategy on ending GBV in Uganda, and in the new revised National Action Plan to eliminate GBV in Uganda, we have actually defined this clearly with clear strategies and action, and one key of them is providing safe spaces for women, I mean for men. And in the same vein, the GBV shelters, besides accommodation, we provided a wing which we are calling, in terms of defining the model of a GBV shelter, that the advisory centers, it is accommodates all the gender. You go there, present your issue, then you are given the support or services that is in tandem with your challenge. So what has been actually lacking is information, provide men with information that they can actually report. We have also enhanced our collaboration with jail system, especially police, because initially police would even harass men. If you went to police station and you reported a case of an assault either by your wife, then they would laugh at you, even probably even chase you away to say, but which type of a man is this one? So we have told the police we have trained the police force to ensure that in case, but also within the family protection unit, they're also now receiving men. So we are calling upon men to take advantage of the GBV National Referral Pathway, which has different service points, which I know if you went there. But also, the partners that are in this meeting is also to ensure, can you also now maybe think of having these special safe spaces men can be spoken to. In the strategies, in the National Action Plan, for us, we have defined it that actually it is a requirement. Men require this safe space. In terms of policy, we have directed, we have given direction. So it is now all about us putting all these efforts together to ensure that indeed these safe spaces are provided.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayanja. You've touched on the GBV shelters, and we actually had a question in that regard. I want Josephine Nakato. Earlier on, you had mentioned that we have 23 registered GBV shelters. And I want Josephine Nakato is asking that where are these shelters and how can we access them? Is there a toll-free line? You've also mentioned the national referral pathways. How are we able to access these shelters? You might find it might not be me personally need, but I know someone who is undergoing GBV and I would like to help. So how can we easily access these GBV shelters? Thank you. Mr. Mayanja, are you there? Mr. Mayanja, you're muted. We can't hear you. Mr. Mayanja, can you hear
Hello?
us? Yes. Now we can hear you.
Hello? Oh, yes. Thank you. Sorry. I think that is a very, 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 very pertinent question in terms of dissemination of information. Like I said, most of these GBV shelters, they're across the country at regional, in regions. For instance, in Kampala here, the ministry in partnership with partners, we are running 3 GBV shelters. We have one in Tinda Ministers Village run by UNIT. Then we have one transitional GBV shelter at Chibuli CID quarters. Now, when you go to northern maybe, then when you come to Teso, have one in Katakwi, one in Kumi, Bukibin, Sebei region, we have one in Kweni. So when you come to Soga, have one in Mutumba, one in Jinja, one in Kaki. When you come to Sambra, we have one in Kasese. Then in Karamoja, have Moroto, Amudat. So those are some of the GBV shelters that we are running. But you can as well use the toll-free number, the Sauti one. We have merged that Sauti to report cases, violence against children, but also violence against women, men, boys, and girls. So the 116 is our referral toll-free. You can call in and they will connect that survivor to any service point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayanja. Just one last question. We have a question from Joachim Chimuli, who says, has a comparative analysis on digital violence been carried out within the region? How are we doing as a country? Let me ask the question
Yeah,
again.
I think that. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chimuli Joachim says, has a comparative analysis on digital violence been carried out within the region, and how are we doing as a country? I know you had hinted on it, but you can tell us more about it.
Yeah, so I think apparently what we are getting are just pieces. It's not a study that has been conducted, but what is being reported, for instance. Now, when we look at the magnitude of digital violence reported by WOBOS, indicated that 95% of respondents have experienced no, it is here. The magnitude. So yes, in Uganda, 49% of women experience online harassment, especially on consensual sharing of image and sexual. So the truth is, this analysis in terms of data collection and all this, we are best they have ever interfaced with violence through digital space. But we haven't conducted that deep analysis, and that is an area that I want to interest everyone to join Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, but also Ministry of ICT on ensuring that this deep analysis or comparative analysis conducted so that we have the real picture of the country. But in terms of projections, in terms of what is being reported, then those projections have been made and we have those figures. But in terms of facts and figures, I think I would also recommend the deep comparative analysis so that but what is important, I think, on that specific question is that we need now to ensure that digital violence is an indicator of UN Women. We run after 2 years a survey on violence, and therefore we are adding a specific indicator on digital violence. And one, because of funding, the last survey on violence was conducted in 2022, but last week I had a meeting with WOBOS, and they have secured money from UNICEF, and therefore next year early they are starting to conduct that survey. And our big request to them has been adding the indicator on digital violence, but also asking those specific variables like the moderator was saying, deep faking and all this, how people are interfacing with digital violence, so that in the next survey on violence against women and girls, the digital violence will come out eminently. Over to you.
All right, let's give Mr. Mubarak another round of applause. Thank you so much, Mr. Mubarak, for sparing your time to be here with us. We really learned so much from you, and we really appreciate your time and your effort to join us. Thank you so much. On behalf of the Uganda Law Society, we are truly indebted, and we've learned so much from all that you've said. And I'm going to just give just a quick recap of what has been my take home from Mr. Mubarak's presentation. He talked about how the 16 days of activism against 16 days of activism, what we are commemorating today, was celebrated in Kasese against gender-based violence. We've been commemorating it in Kasese, and he also talked about the decline there's been a significant drop in the statistics from 2016, where we saw a decline from 56% in 2016 to about 44% today. And we've also seen a decline, that is in physical violence against women and girls. Then we also saw a decline from 2007, whereby physical violence against women was at 76% to where we are now. And he also mentioned about the sexual violence prevalence, which has also significantly declined from 2016, which was at 26% prevalence, and is now at 16%, which is a significant decline of 10%, which is really a big achievement. And then he also talked about another decline in non-sexual violence, which was at 44% in 2016 and is currently now at 34%. So as a country, we are taking strides towards the eradication of gender-based violence, and we hope to have a future free from gender-based violence. And he also mentioned the different the legal frameworks that we can take to our advantage when combating gender-based violence. He mentioned the Domestic Violence Act, which not only just recognizes physical violence, but also looks at the sexual violence, the economic violence, psychological violence, which most times in our African cultural settings are usually underlooked, you know. To say that I'm feeling emotionally violated, you know. Some people will be like, I don't think so. Yes, and yet it is actually there. And he also mentioned the Computer Misuse Act, which has also been very, very important, instrumental in combating online abuse, like cyber stalking, like, you know, sexual harassment, and all those different other forms of online abuse. And he also talked about the Trafficking Persons Act. And I just wanted to add also the Data Protection and Privacy Act. We've seen people prosecuted under these different laws. I think some years ago, about 5 to 10 years ago, we had some Ugandan artist who was involved in an incident of revenge pornography. This is like where you find, let's say they were dating, and maybe she shared some intimate pictures with her boyfriend by then, and then they break up, and the guy is like, okay, let me show you. And of course, being someone from, you're maybe you're a musician. She's a musician, an artist with so many fans. The guy decides to what? Release her nudes. And this has been happening. It's not a one-off. It has been happening to many elites in this society, So revenge porn has been and is still a big challenge, So ladies, please, let's be careful. Let's not share those pictures. Yes. So those are some of the things that people are experiencing. That is a form of sexual harassment, because you're releasing things that were given to you in privacy, and you're publishing them for the whole world to see. And we know that there is this principle that says that the internet never forgets. You get? So next time you Google their name, guess what pops up? Scandals, scandalous pictures, So some of those things have reputational impacts on the victims. So we shouldn't take this lightly. Yes, and also Mr. Mubarak also gave some of the causes of GBV. He talked about the social norms, the social and cultural norms, and he talked about poverty. And then I remembered a certain meme. Someone was saying that a guy who has cornflakes for breakfast and someone who has cassava for breakfast, like when you get an argument, there is a way cassava invokes anger. So it was so funny. So when Mr. Mubarak mentioned it, I was like, poverty is actually one of the causes of GBV for sure. Anyway, so we'd like to thank you so much, Mr. Mubarak, for that wonderful presentation. We've really had so much to learn, and we still have so much to learn. And this takes us to our next speaker, who is right over here, and we are so happy and excited to hear from her. She's called Miss Bruna Patricia Acham, and briefly I'm going to just introduce her. Miss Bruna is an advocate of the courts of judicature in Uganda with a specialty in enhancing access to justice for marginalized and vulnerable groups, particularly women and children. With over a decade of experience in legal aid litigation, she advocates for and promotes the rights of undeserved communities. She has led groundbreaking initiatives, including championing the establishment of Karamoja's first holistic legal aid service provider under the Uganda Law Society, justice centers in Uganda, in Mbale, mentoring youth to become champions of social justice, and enabling over 1,000 indigent persons to access justice. Wow. She is the founder of Femme Justice for Women's Legal and Economic Empowerment, chairperson of Karamoja Rights Advocates Network, and the board secretary of the Women Human Rights Defenders Network Uganda. Bruna holds an LLM in International Human Rights Law and Practice from the University of York, where her research centered on the role of legal aid in advancing women's rights, a postgraduate diploma in public administration and management from the Uganda Management Institute. Bruna also holds a postgraduate diploma in legal practice from the Law Development Center and a Bachelor of Laws degree from Makerere University. Allow me with great honor, welcome Miss Bruna Patricia Acham. You're most welcome. Let's give her a more firm round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that warm introduction. I am very honored and delighted to be here this morning, now it's afternoon, to share experiences and to speak about or to raise awareness about digital gender-based violence. For the listeners that are joining us today, my predecessor, the one who spoke before me, and the moderator have given us briefs on 16 days of activism and why we commemorate them since 1991, yes. And this year specifically, we are coming together to raise awareness about ending digital violence against all women and girls. This is an emerging trend. It's something that is happening. If I am to reflect back, I first came across a case or a situation of online gender-based violence in 2014 when an artist, a renowned artist in Uganda's images were leaked on social media. And I vividly remember the reaction of the society. People were excited. I don't know why they were excited about this. Somebody's private moments shared online, and everyone was sharing, Twitter then, I don't think, probably it was there, but I don't remember. But they were resharing images of this artist. And one unfortunate thing about this particular scenario is that it has continued to affect this person to date. She may have recovered as an individual, but the reality is the internet has not forgotten. Recently, when this individual was getting married, it resurfaced. Oh, you're getting married to somebody who is They labeled her different names, and this is the reality of what women and girls go through. We listened to Mr. Mayanja, and he alluded to the fact that women and girls are the largest numbers of victims or survivors of gender-based violence. And we also heard that 1 in every 3 women experience violence. And to bring it down to the theme, which is digital violence, the UN Women reports that globally, 85% of women experience online gender-based violence. That is a very big number. It could be me, it could be you, it could be your sibling or any other person. And so that is why I want to appreciate the leadership of the Uganda Law Society, the RNB visionaries, and the Secretariat at large for creating this space, giving us room to be able to air or to speak about issues that affect individuals and have lifelong impact on them, on their reputation, on their possibilities to get work, and all the other aspects that come with it. I was introduced, but I just want to emphasize something. I am the founder of Femme Justice for Women's Legal and Economic Empowerment. Femme Justice is a youth-led initiative that seeks or is dedicated to empowering women and girls through legal and economic empowerment. We stand together with girls and women to ensure that their agency is built. They are confident enough and are aware about their rights, but not only confident enough, but they also have the ability to defend themselves or to speak up for themselves, and by that they are able to challenge any forms of discrimination and any forms of violence that is perpetrated against them. As an individual, I am glad to be back in this room again, because this is where my journey starts. It started 10 years ago from this very space here at the Law Society. And I like to say that I am a success story of the Uganda Law Society, because my mentorship started with individuals here. I stand on the shoulders of Christina Wari, Deborah Gasana, Bessie J. Aaron, and the former Secretary, Council Nicholas Opio. Those were people that mentored me, and to the date, I continue to give them thanks for holding my hand. And it's testament to what we as women need to be able to overcome discrimination, to overcome violence, or even to be able to become empowered to stand and speak for ourselves. And so as an individual, I am passionate about women's empowerment, and I stand tall to build the confidence and the agency of women in different spaces that I go to. And that is through mentorship, creating awareness of their rights, and offering free legal services, plus equipping women with resources, tools, and enabling them have opportunities. I was given an opportunity as a young student, and that is why I have walked this path. And likewise, I am giving back to other young girls. So today, our theme, ending digital violence against all women and girls. We have listened to Mr. Mayanja. He has literally said almost everything about it. He's talked about the legal framework, he's talked about the data, the statistics in the country, and also highlighted what the different forms of violence, but I'll just build up on a few of them. I want to take this opportunity to tell us in this room and those that are watching online that many of us are actually perpetrators of online gender-based violence. Do we agree? Or do we not agree? I'm seeing people nodding in affirmative and others in not affirmative. When we talk about digital gender-based violence, we're talking about technologically facilitated violence, that is using any act of gender-based violence against women that is committed, assisted, or aggravated in part or fully by the use of information and communication technologies, that is a smartphone, a computer, or any other digital tool, or even a tracking device. And this form of violence many times occurs even, there is a very close connection between the online digital violence and the offline digital violence. Things that happen online when a person is either harassed online, when somebody's photos are shared in a non-consensual manner, when they did not agree to whatever happens online usually has an impact on an individual when they walk back home. What does society perceive of this person? How does her family receive her? And what opportunities do we block out for these individuals? And so that is why I say that the forms of violence, when we talk about it, and I'm glad Mr. Mayanja talked about sexual violence, physical violence, economic violence, and psychological violence, because it is the reality. When we see things shared online, it just does not end online. It has an interconnection with what happens away from that. Uganda as a nation has taken very commendable strides in fighting gender-based violence. And today we have heard that when they were celebrating or commemorating this year's 16 days of activism in Kasese, we noted that there was a drop in the there was a drop in numbers of people experiencing violence, which is commendable. And I want to take this opportunity to appreciate the government and the Ministry of Gender and Labor Social Development for taking initiatives to ensure that women have spaces and have access to justice, they are economically empowered, and their vulnerabilities are dealt with, which are usually points through which they face violence. And specifically for now, I want to dwell more on the legal framework and the legal and institutional frameworks that we have in Uganda that deal with digital gender-based violence, and to talk about whether we are in actual sense dealing with issues that affect women online. Mr. Mayanja talked about all the other laws, the Domestic Violence Act, the Penal Code Act, which many times enable people to access justice when it comes to questions of any other form of violence that is usually away from the digital violence. And now for this one, we have different laws. Uganda has a robust legal framework that deals with different forms of digital violence. However, the law on paper is excellent. But the question is, what is the practice? There is a very big conflict between the law on paper and the law in practice. And why is because when it comes to implementation of the laws that we have, there is a very big challenge. One, because there is capacity gap of the individuals that are supposed to handle cases of such a nature. Two is because of societal norms. He spoke about the norms in society, which continue to hold women behind, even when we have laws that provide for their rights, that provide for their privacy, and prohibit people from intruding into spaces of women. To start with the Computer Misuse Act, for those that are watching, the Computer Misuse Act creates clearly offenses or protects the rights of individuals, including women, and ensures that information that is accessed or when using digital tools, we ought to be careful on what we use that information or how we use the digital tools for. And so under the Computer Misuse Act, there are specific offenses that are created therein that seek to prohibit people from dealing with information of others in manners that infringe on their rights, but also that create other offenses that seek to protect people's or women's rights to whatever aspects. First of all is cyber harassment. My colleague spoke about cyber harassment, but I want to dwell more on it. Usually this involves intentionally intruding into the private life of a person through information and through ICT, causing them mental distress. It takes different forms, such as we can intrude verbally, sexually, emotionally, or through social abuse. We have seen people on social media bringing people's private lives onto the social media, especially now on TikTok. And this is something that is common. Things that have happened in the private, we bring them onto the social media, even when it is not it is not agreeable to. And so the Computer Misuse Act comes in to say that any person who commits what we have defined above as cyber harassment, that is making any request, suggestion, or proposal which is obscene, indecent, commits an offense, which is cyber harassment. Or any person that threatens to inflict injury or physical harm to another person through a digital tool, also you would be liable to an offense, which is cyber harassment. The law also provides for offenses such as cyber stalking. We've heard about people who stalk others online. We had a scenario, a case that the prosecution, the DPP, should be still handling of somebody that continuously stalked another person online. And it's still ongoing. I have not seen yet successful prosecution of cases on digital violence, and that is one of the things that we'll be talking about when we come to challenges. Then there is misuse of social media, child pornography. There are people that use these tools to share content of children, in a sexualizing children on social media. And also, I already talked about sharing intimate photos without the consent. Then Uganda also has the Data Protection Act, the Data Protection and Privacy Act, which seeks to ensure that information of individuals is used in a correct manner. And one, we observe the principles of confidentiality when dealing with persons or information of persons. Now, given these laws that we have, internationally we also have the CEDAW, Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, mandates or places a responsibility on states to protect, respect, and fulfill rights of women and ensure that women do not undergo any forms of violence, which also includes online violence. Amidst all these many laws that Uganda has, the reality on ground is the law is beautiful, but the practice is lacking. Why is it that there are so many cases of women's intimate photos that have been shared without their consent, but we have not seen any of these cases being successfully prosecuted? That points to a gap. In 2014, when that musician's photo was leaked on social media, the Minister of Ethics then issued a directive to the police to investigate, to arrest, and keep the musician away from the public. Why? Because she had contravened, allegedly, provisions of the Anti-Pornography Act. But was that the reality? Not really the reality. So some of the challenges that we see is misconception or a misunderstanding of the laws that seek to protect women from digital violence, and also the lack of capacity of the mandated officials to prosecute cases of digital violence. Why? Because the level of, when it comes to provision of evidence against cases of digital violence, it may be possible to prove that certain elements of a case, but where the challenge usually comes in is the ability to prove that the suspect committed that offense. Why? Because usually it can happen in third party. Someone else, either out of the country, could share images of another person. And so how possible or how easy is it to track those particular individuals? Many times it is not. And so because of these gaps that we have in prosecution, in our laws, it becomes, we are facing challenges in trying and curbing or combating digital violence. And I believe that that is why spaces like these are important, for us to raise issues, for us to advocate for the rights of those that whose rights have been infringed digitally, and also to make the government aware of where we as practitioners, we as CSOs feel there is a gap and where they need to come in. So I will get to the last bit of my presentation, which is the role of CSOs. That is what I was requested to speak about. What is the role of CSOs in combating gender-based violence? And I want to say that civil society organizations play a complementary role to what the state has to play. One, I want to highlight the fact that the state has a responsibility to respect, to protect, and to fulfill, to put in different mechanisms to ensure that people have areas to access, they have access to information, access to justice in situations where their rights are infringed, and also that they create laws or enact laws that bridge the gaps that we have talked about above, but also protect the rights of women and girls. So as civil society organizations, in a complementary role to what government is already doing, our role is critical through advocacy, raising voices to challenge forms of abuse perpetrated against women. Also, civil society organizations support through research and capacity building. We go to the grassroots levels to conduct research to identify what issues are women and girls experiencing, so that we can be able to inform the state of what needs to be done and suggest or make recommendations of best mechanisms through which they can be able to intervene to ensure that women and girls enjoy their rights. Then there is the aspect of capacity building and public awareness. Just like the Uganda Law Society does it through the Legal Aid Project, civil society organizations reach out to different communities, to the grassroots levels and in different spheres, to train communities on digital literacy and safe online engagement. The moderator alluded to the fact that the social media never forgets, internet never forgets, and so we need to be wise on how we use the internet, and that is where the CSOs come in, to educate now especially the young people and remind them that they ought to deal carefully when engaging with social media. They also build capacity of law enforcement agencies, and for example, the judiciary, the police, and the ODPP, so that they have the better capacity to be able to prosecute or to handle cases of digital violence, as well as doing community or public awareness campaigns to create awareness, to build the agency of individuals that they meet on a daily basis. And finally, there is an aspect of advocating for policy reform, pushing hard to ensure that different policies are enacted to protect, or gaps are bridged in the existing policies to protect the rights of women and girls. And so I want to state that the CSOs are a very relevant or critical actor when it comes to combating any forms of violence against women and girls, be it digital or the offline violence against women and girls. And it is important for us as CSOs to have collective action, to raise voices and to champion causes that seek to promote the rights of women and girls and prevent any forms of violence, including the digital forms of violence. And getting to the very last bit of it, I also want to use this space to call on to the government to take action to ensure that women and girls have avenues through which they enjoy legal protection. Access to justice is a very key component when it comes to the realization of rights of individuals. Access to justice is both a right and a vehicle through which people enjoy their rights, through which people can seek for protection of their rights through the different mechanisms, both the informal and the formal mechanisms. And looking at the landscape in Uganda and the ability of especially the underserved communities to access justice, we see a very big gap. Our government has a nice policy when it comes to criminal justice. We have state-funded legal aid. I'll put it that way. That is through the state briefs, especially for capital offenders. But when it comes to civil legal aid, we have a very big gap. The government currently is funding Justice Centers Uganda that offers legal aid to the indigent persons, but this funding covers only 4 centers. There are just only 4 centers that are funded under government. And the question is, looking at the Uganda geographically, and the numbers of people who are indigent, the numbers of people that need to access justice, are the 4 centers enough to ensure that every person has access to free legal services, especially the indigent? And I would say, given my experiences in the communities in Karamoja, in the communities in Mbale, and all the other places that we operate in, my answer would be a definite no. And this is where I am making a call to government and seeking for government to pass the legal aid bill. Because through the legal aid bill, then we are able to ensure that what international law calls as a good practice would be something that we as Ugandans can be able to enjoy. We shall be able to realize our rights through the different free legal services, and we can be able to institute claims, to have free representation, or even clear free legal advice offered to the needy people in the communities that we serve in. And so this is directed to the government, and the parliament, the legislators that will be coming in, to consider passing the legal aid bill, because that is where the vehicle to realizing the rights of women and girls, fighting digital violence against women and girls, would be most realized. I thank you so much, and once again, thank you for organizing this space, and I look forward to interacting with the viewers in case they have any questions. Thank you.
Another warm round of applause to our presenter, Ms. Brunner. Ms. Brunner has said so much, and it has really been wonderful to hear from her, giving her perspective on the role of the CSOs in combating gender-based violence. We have some questions for you, Brunner. We have Mr. Kakoza Mark, who is asking. He says, the anti-pornography law had started to witch hunt victims of online nude scandals. Does this law still exist? It was a bad law targeting victims. And then Susan says, thank you so much, Bruna. Your CV is so inspiring. This is a comment from Susan online. She says, thank you, Bruna. Your CV is so inspiring. I'm inspired to join the CSO sector and fight for women's rights. Thank you, Susan, for that comment. And then Abdallah K. Says, you spent some time in the UK. Bruna, this is to you. He says you spent some time in the UK. How are the UK laws on this? What can Uganda borrow? So those are the 2 questions, one from Mark and the other from Abdallah. Just to reiterate the question, Kakoza Mark was saying the anti-pornography law had started to witch hunt victims of online nude scandals. Does this law still exist? It was a bad law targeting victims. Then Abdallah says you spent some time in the UK. How are the UK laws on this? What can Uganda borrow?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much thank you, Kakoza, Susan, and Abdallah, for your questions. They are necessary questions. I'll start with Kakoza. Whether the anti-pornography law is still in use, I want to say yes, it is. Although there were specific sections of the law that were challenged in the Constitutional Court, we still have the Anti-Pornography Act in place, and it is still being used. We also have the Anti-Pornography Committee. It's called the committee, right? Yes. We have the Anti-Pornography Committee that is there to to curb anything that they want to purport to be that falls within their ambit. However, I want you to know that there were provisions that were outlawed, and so you treat it in that manner. And then the last question is from Abdallah on the laws in the UK. I want to say that the system in the Uganda and the UK share a lot in common. We both have a common law system that we use. And the procedures that we use for handling cases are similar. However, the difference that comes in is in the aspect of our capacity to implement or to enforce the laws in place. For those who are actual residents of our country, know that there's a selective form of prosecution in our country. The laws that are supposed to protect us many times are protecting a particular category of people. That is speaking in reality. For example, the Computer Misuse Act that ordinarily would be protecting women and girls against digital violence is currently being effectively managed for political cases. We had Dr. Stella Nyanzi, who was tried and convicted out of this particular law. Then we have TikTokers as well, who have been charged with offenses still under the Computer Misuse Act. And so that draws us to the fact that our government, the police, the DPP, have capacity to actually invoke sections in the law. But the question is, how often do they do so? Now, looking at the other side, that is the UK, the practice recognizes all people as equal. I'm not saying Uganda does not. Uganda does, but we see preferential treatment or selective prosecution. So in that case, in the UK, implementation or enforcement of laws that seek to protect the digital rights of women is fully executed. There is no exception, there is no excuse to individuals when it comes to the need to protect the rights of women. And this is something that Uganda, we would advocate as citizens of this country, or we would use our mandate as individuals to make the necessary change, make the noise. You, Abdallah, are a voice in the country, and your voice has so much power. Your writing on media or whatever has power. Through the noises that we make, we raise awareness, and we call government to act, to become accountable for things that we feel they have not been accountable to. And lastly, to Susan, thank you. I am humbled and glad that you've been inspired. I want to say that Femme Justice is a membership organization and is open to any young women who are interested in joining as members, and together we'll be able to advocate for the rights of women, to champion causes that seek to protect the rights of women and girls. Thank you. So you're welcome to join, Susan.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Bruna. Bruna has talked about the selective application of these laws, to political opponents. It's really unfortunate that, we do not have many significant prosecutions when it comes to women who have actually experienced online abuse and gender-based violence online. But then when it is political in nature, there is a way the government has political will to prosecute people over the Computer Misuse Act and all those other laws. So we hope that the government will put more efforts towards actually prosecuting. Bruna mentioned that she had not really seen a significant case that has been successfully prosecuted, and a person being prosecuted for online abuse. But then when we see the likes of Stella Nyanzi, it's really unfortunate that it's being used as a weapon against political opponents. So briefly, I would like to just run through what I take home from what Bruna talked about. She says one of the key things that she said was that the law on paper is very good, it's very beautiful, but then what is actually in practice, is this law being applied? We have very wonderful laws. In fact, I think we rank among the top countries with the best legislation in the world. But then when it comes to implementation, what goes wrong? Do we just speak English and leave it at that? No, there has to be better implementation. And it shouldn't just be selective. It should be cut across all the different disciplines. And then she also talked about the different forms of this online abuse, you know. She talked about the cyber stalking, the cyber harassment. She gave us that example of the revenge porn, you know, when what happened to one of our artists. And it's so unfortunate that instead they prosecuted her. They wanted to prosecute her under the Anti-Pornography Act, yet she is the victim. So it's like the victim is now being what? Prosecuted, which is so unfair. So, and then of course there was a lot of public condemnation. And I liked what Bruna also mentioned. She said that majority of the perpetrators of many of us are perpetrators of online and digital GBV. And you might say, okay, I've never really stalked someone or harassed someone, but just sharing a photo, you retweeting something, someone is, you even telling lies. Some people now, I've been seeing it a lot when I was at campus. We used to call it chemical, when someone is campaigning, especially a lady, and then they just line up all your exes, all, they line them up, all that dirt, they dig up dirt and they just publish it there. And then they circulate it, and then you find, let's say the opponent is also using that, to ride on that. And it's quite interesting. I saw a video recently by Dr. Miriam Matembe, and she was saying, women, why is it that women are the same ones fighting fellow women? And she was cautioning women, especially now that we're in this electoral season where you find women who, let's say they are all running for the same post in the same constituency, and then a woman stands up and says, you vote for me. Hey, this one is not married. She doesn't have children. She's not married. She will not know how to handle your problems. Yeah, she was divorced. Her husband left her. Such a woman, how can she represent your problems in parliament? So Miriam Matembe was cautioning women to stop being the perpetrators of violence against fellow women. You can imagine, how does my marital status affect my leadership in parliament? Isn't it about my intellect? Isn't it about my leadership skills? What does me being married or single or divorced have to do with how I am able to represent my constituents? So Dr. Miriam Matembe was cautioning women, let us not ride on such minor petty issues to pull others down, Let's win those seats on basis of competence, not about you being married or divorced and whatnot. So I found that quite interesting, because that also in itself is also abuse. Because if you go and publish it and you're, humiliating another woman, pulling them down, you're also harassing them. You're making them feel a certain way. And you're using your device. So you're perpetuating gender-based violence. So thank you so much, Bruna, for those wonderful insights. And she also gave us, she just briefly mentioned about some of the legal framework, both national and regional. She talked about ACIDO, which mandates states to protect women from violence, including online violence, And then she also mentioned the roles of the CSOs in curbing and combating GBV, which is, first of all, the role of the state to protect, to respect, and to fulfill, and ensure that women are protected from gender-based violence. She also talked about their role in regards to research and capacity building. I heard that Mr. Mayanja was quoting so many of those statistics, but don't be surprised when you hear that actually majority of the statistics were actually from CSOs, the ones who usually do this research and avail that information to the government. She also talked about capacity building and public awareness, and how also CSOs educate people, on how to deal responsibly online. I also wanted to caution people. We've seen a lot of people now posting their children. It's also very important to also be cautious how you also use your social media when it comes to the identity of your loved ones. There was a certain ad I saw from the Data Protection Commission of a certain young girl moving with her parents. They were in the mall, and then they were going up the escalator, and then a random man just came and said, "Oh, Eva, how are you? I see you're going to play again today. It's a Thursday. You go for your soccer practice." And then the mother turns around and is like, "Do you know that man?" This girl was just like about 8 years old. She's like, "Do you know that man?" And she innocently just shakes her head. They get off the escalator. Another random lady in one of the malls says, "Oh, Eva, I see today you're with your father. I hope he's not going to be late to pick you up again like he was as always." And then everyone, the father is looking at the girl is looking at the father, and then later on, we just see the father had been posting pictures of the girl, and, he puts those captions, late again today, and now, of course, people are following, So let's also be alive to the audience, let's be alive, because now child trafficking is on the rise, and it has become so bad to the extent that even people advise you not to even label the names of your children on their bags, because you find, let's say, children who are going home, someone can just come and read the name on the bag and be like, "Oh, you're Brian, daddy sent me to come and pick you from school. It's me, uncle, don't you remember?" And an innocent child will just go with them. You get? So let's be cautious of what we do online, of who we post online, our family. Let's really be cautious. So I'd like to take this opportunity once again to thank you all for being here. A special thank you to Bruna. Thank you so much for taking your time, for sharing with us as we're commemorating the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. We are so happy to have had you come here all the way, and to remind us that it's a journey that we can join hands. You've invited us to join Femme Justice. I'm very excited to be a member. I'd like to hear more details about it. And it's also humbling to know that you also started from here. You are from the Uganda Law Society, and now you're up there advocating for women and rights of women and the girl child. It's really inspiring. Thank you so much. And I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank our council for giving us this platform, this opportunity to talk about the 16 days of activism, to commemorate this day and bring awareness. The more we talk about these things, the more we create awareness, the more we educate ourselves on such pertinent issues. Yes. So I'd like to thank you all so much for coming. We've come to the end of our 45th edition of the Radical New Bar Live. We just have a small announcement. We are having the Access to Justice Run on the 29th of November, which is going to take place at LDC grounds. The run is starting at 6 a.m. sharp. Please, 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 you're welcome to come. Just purchase a kit. And this is not going to just be a run. It's going to be the ULS Sports Day. and fun day. So it's starting with the Access to Justice Run at 6 a.m. So you're welcome to come purchase a kit. Kits go for 35,000 shillings and 25,000 shillings. With this kit, you'll be able to participate in the run and then participate in many other activities. We have aerobics, we have the Lawyers League, taking us through the matches. We have a wide range of games, indoor games, outdoor games, sports activities, so much to offer. And it's going to have 2 CLE points. So please, don't say, I have not accumulated the points. You will have this run for sure. At least have 2 points, even though you fail to get 20. We can justify the rest. So thank you all so much for this opportunity. I'd like us now to have a photo moment with our speakers before we close this. And my name is Angom Ruth Julie. I've been your moderator for that day. And thank you all so much.